Okay, so let me also introduce, and I remove the mask, just you can see also my face. It's a great pleasure to have this seminar. It's an initiative seminar, so we are also running the seminar here in Venice at Bottacin, at the European Center for Living Technology. The seminar is organized in the context of two European projects. One is the AI for You project, which is the project I've been working on in the past years with Professor Luke Steels, who is also here attending the seminar. And there is the other project who is also which contributed for this organization of this event is Masai. So it's another European project in the fields of AI, big data, in the context of manufacturing. And let me now introduce our speaker of today here. So Gabriela Bar, here, she's a lawyer. She is a managing partner in a law firm dealing with legal aspects in technological projects, so in ICT and AI and blockchain related projects. And she's also lecturing at the Silesia University in Katowice. Yeah, right, in Poland. Right. Don't worry, I will just introduce the speaker. Good to see you. So welcome. And okay, so we have this kind of online and also in-presence offline interactions with attendees from both sides. And so today, Gabriela, she will be talking about basically her project, because she was also involved in European projects dealing with AI applied in industry, in factories. So she will be talking about data and data protection issues. So thanks, Gabriela, again for this contribution, and I will be keen to listen also.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you, Teresa, for invitation and all your help and support that I can be here today. It's great to be in Venice and to be here to give this lecture for you. So I will try to share my screen now and to show you some. Okay, I hope it works. So the project I'm part of is multi-agent systems for persuasive artificial intelligence for assisting humans in modular production environment. Very long name, but the shortcut is Math for AI. And I'm responsible for legal and ethical issues in this project. So I thought that the most important issue will be data in general, data, personal, non-personal, other data in smart factory, because with data, there are many connected with data. There are many legal aspects, legal problems like data, personal data protection, but also automated decision making and explainability of AI, which is the field of my scientific interest. Okay, so maybe as a first point will be the how to make the right short film. So yeah, it was kind of short introduction, and here you have basic information about the project. So as you can see, there are a few countries involved in this project, including Italy. Apart from that, Lithuania, Poland, Germany, Greece, and Spain. The project started, let's say, 2 years ago, not yet 2, but 1.5. And we are planning to work together till September 2023. And the main issues we deal with is AI in smart manufacturing. Of course, different aspects of AI. So why the project was started, why it's important? There are a few reasons. First is increasing international competition, increasing demand for high quality individual products, but at the same time, customer specific products that have to be produced in a very small batch size. Growing complexity of the production facilities used in the industrial production. So there is a need to adapt some new technologies. And artificial intelligence for manufacturing must support distributed decision making for all of them. Smart modules, smart factories, and smart production networks. I will tell about it a little bit more later. And finally, market entrance of new AI products are very often blocked because missing interoperability between different systems, so-called vendor lock-in, and also AI algorithms are very often restricted to a specific framework. So we try to deal with these problems and create a full spectrum vendor independent AI technology contributing to agile European factories. And we did, of course, gap analysis. So we addressed some problems that we found in a picture of European smart industry. So we have already existing AI technologies in manufacturing, but sometimes it's quite difficult to transfer these technologies to real life. I mean, to use them in a production environment, not only in a researcher's laboratory and on the test phase. So Math for AI utilizes capabilities of existing industrial Internet of Things and AI technologies, but focuses on agility and safety of these technical solutions, integration of different systems, and deployment AI in real environment. So to achieve this goal, we need to improve technical scientific excellence, create impact based on previous and public-private investments, and this is very important to underline that we cooperate with some other projects, platforms like Platform Industry 4.0, Smart Factory, Digital Innovation Hubs, and mentioned before AI for EU. And this cooperation is very important to produce something that will be really useful, not only for big players, but probably the most important is that it will be useful also for SMEs and for even small factories, small businesses that can use some of the tools we are working on. So the general vision is presented on this picture. So there are a few layers of the project, like multi-agent AI system, then autonomous modular production. So these modules we can use separately, we can use together, we can configure them quite freely. Of course, these models may be implemented in any enterprise, but their goal is to be used in a smart factory when they can be put together. Where they can be put together and used together, when they cooperate. Of course, the human assistance and human involvement is very important here too. So these human factors are underlined on every stage of the project. And finally, we have smart production network, so we can build on these two bases, also integration and deployment of AI components in any complex cloud environment. This is concept overview. If you have any questions about it, I won't answer them because I'm a lawyer, not a machine learning specialist, but I will gladly pass your questions to my project manager who will answer this question. This is also knowledge representation in this project. I believe that the presentation will be available for you. So if anybody will be interested more about these issues, feel free to ask Teresa probably to publish this presentation. Okay, we have also pilot cases. So we have pilot implementations, which is very, very important, I think, because we can check and we can prove that it works in real environment. So on the first picture, we have Smart Factory Industry 4.0 modular testbed. This is okay.
So I just want to make sure.
Okay. Okay. So we should be here now. How does it look like? Okay, presentazione. Okay, I remember the layout. Okay, good. So sorry for an inconvenience. Yeah, good. Well, so there are pilot cases. So as you can see, this is something what has impact on real life in real factories like Volkswagen and VDL Industrial, Versa Bearings production, Baltic, Virus, bicycle production, and finally SCM wood processing. And these pilot cases are on different stages, but we'll be continuing them and check the progress. And also, as from my side, I'm responsible for ethical and legal frameworks to be implemented in these pilot cases. Okay. Yeah, it does. It's not so easy. Okay. Maybe again. We'll come here.
Okay, now I see. This is your very good way to go. Okay.
Maybe we can just keep the presentation on.
Yes, perhaps, yes. Perhaps.
Okay, okay. Yeah, but no. Doesn't work now, unfortunately, a little bit.
Yes, it seems quite,
Yeah, it's technology, you know.
yeah, it's not very smart, this one. Not a very
There
good
are
example.
always some problems with this. Maybe we just can go out soon. I mean, not fully, but
Yeah, but I don't. I must to be, but it's not.
no. Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Whew.
the cursor is on the big screen only.
Yes, in fact, I see. I lost really. I probably with a mouse that would be helpful because it seems. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I can't do anything later. Like you know, I just can't. Yeah, it's okay. Now something happened. Maybe I will.
Okay, so just the only problem is to get out from the presentation mode. Okay.
I got out from the presentation.
Okay, so go ahead with this. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, probably, so, yeah, because it, now
Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. So I'm not sure what you see on, but I hope that full slide. Okay. Good. Well, so results of the project should be multi-agent reference architecture that focuses on AI agents and human-machine interaction. It will be open source platform that could be used by any smart enterprises, and of course it will be compliant with Industry 4.0 standards. I think the other thing important is also this cooperation and building success stories within the AI man cluster, which involves many smart industry projects. So we have some legal issues in the project. Some of them are mentioned here, like safety and really security and cyber security in smart manufacturing. The other is, of course, liability, because we don't really have any rules on liability for software and artificial intelligence in particular. And some legal issues also appear when we talk about licensing, IPR, patents, etc. So there are also some issue of this kind. However, today I would like to tell you something more about data in smart environment. So first, I would like to start with privacy and personal data protection. And the issues I think are important to talk about are data in general, data which are processed in the smart environment, because they are both personal, non-personal, and mixed data sets. Then we need to think what kind of data are processed in components and tools, in AI tools too. We should always identify processing activities to understand what's the life cycle of data. The rules that will be very important in a smart environment will be privacy by design and privacy by default. Of course, on every step, on every in each phase of data processing, risk-based approach is necessary. This is also the approach chosen by European Commission for AI in Artificial Intelligence Act. Identification of risk for data subject, because at the end of the day, this is all about data subject and their protection. And of course, because risk is always present in business activity, it's quite impossible to eliminate it at all, but it's good to mitigate the risk. Going further, what kind of data we process in a smart factory? It can be kind of a challenge, because from my perspective, I see that many developers, they don't really think that they process any data. They think they're not personal data. We don't process any names, addresses, personal identifiers. We just process behavioral data, for example. So it's not personal, and it's not necessarily true, because of course, very often these data are not personal data, but when it is possible to connect them with other data, they can become personal. So to establish if in a specific case we have personal data or not, we need to go back to the GDPR and find out if in our case we can determine whether a natural person is identifiable. And it depends, because it depends on the goal, of the purpose of processing. It depends on cost and amount of time required for identification. So yesterday I had a very interesting meeting with people from other projects, also connected with smart factory. And we are discussing about legal issues connected with AI tools that can support production. And we're talking about a tool to make a survey between employees in smart factory. It should be anonymous, but people give completing this survey, they give a lot of data about their work, about how they feel about this work, if this work is hard, boring, maybe some instructions are not clear, maybe there are many factors that distract these people from work, maybe it makes their work difficult or dangerous. And the authors, the developers of this tool were also thinking about having such data like gender, also male, female, and age, like not the exact age, but between 20 and 30, 30 and 50, and that kind of things. And we were discussing if this data could be personal data. And it's really hard to say for sure, because at this moment, probably for this tool developer, there are not personal data, because the tool developer doesn't have any chance to connect it with a specific person. But maybe for company which will be using this tool, it will be much easier, because if people completing this survey will give such data as gender, and they will describe the kind of work they do, probably for the company who which employ them, it will be much more easy to know, okay, this is woman, she does this and this, so maybe we can establish, I don't know what, but let's say it's possible. Who is this person exactly? So it needs a very elastic approach each time. If we have personal data or we have just non-personal data, very often it may be also just mixed data sets, as I said. But for this mixed data set, we also use GDPR. So we have to remember that also in smart factory, data may be captured by sensors from both machines and operators. Sensors may record physiological parameters of operators like heart rate, blood pressure, movement. This sensor may also record actions taken by operators. And all of this data will be personal data for sure, and sometimes very sensitive data about, for example, the health of the specific person. Data may be also derived from system logs or system supporting production, like data recorded by manufacturing execution system or by system logging incidents. And we sometimes don't even realize how many data is collected during some industrial processes, but we need to remember that some of them, at least some of them, will be personal. In smart factory, we have also smart gloves and augmented reality glasses. And these tools are very useful and very interesting also. They help very much employees to do their work. But so-called wearables require special attention of lawyers or privacy specialists, because they collect and really produce huge amount of data about their users. So they can even record some patterns of behavior of the user. So it creates kind of a new identity, like this is only on the basis of behavioral data. We can say, okay, this is Mr. Smith who works like this. Yeah. So apart from that, sensitive data can be apart from data concerning health and racial or ethnic origin, because it's easy to say usually if you use cameras and you can record the person's appearance, but also maybe religious or philosophical beliefs, trade union membership, genetic data, biometric data. Many access solutions, like access to some premises, are restricted by biometric data readers. So it also creates a lot of problems. So even if we, let's say, don't have personal data, we don't need them. We still have to be quite careful, because sometimes non-personal data may turn into personal data by using smart tools. tools, especially when these tools are smarter and smarter, better and better, more complicated. They collect more and more data. So it does not matter if these data are stored and how long they are stored. This is important that they are gathered and maybe they are under a transmission only. We don't store them for long, just for a while, but still this is processing. So gathering and transmission of data is still processing, and you should apply some adequate measure to protect this processing activities. And even it is underlined in the literature that even full anonymization of data which take place nowadays, like today, doesn't have to be necessarily effective in the future, especially if we deal with artificial neural networks, with big data. Sometimes it may occur that what today is non-personal data, tomorrow will be personal, because some additional database, some additional possibilities of analyzing data, putting them together, comparing them. So it's hard to say if full anonymization will be possible in the future. But I need to underline that we have in data protection law, we have two main terms like pseudonymization and anonymization. And in case of anonymization, we delete all data that allow us to identify a natural person. But in case of pseudonymization, we only separate personal data from like kind of identifier, and we can connect them again later, but using a specific key. So it's like encryption is also kind of anonymization, and it's very useful. And this is what, but this is still process. Even if we use pseudonymization, it's still processing of personal data. But this is a very good mean to protect it's a good way to secure personal data, especially in complex environments like smart factory. So main challenges about privacy in smart factory. First thing, when we process sensitive data, we have to have specific legal basis for that, because in general, processing of sensitive data like health data, for example, biometric data, is prohibited. So we have to have explicit consent of data subject or specific legal provision. The other thing is more ethical issue, I think. We sometimes overtrust in data and statistic, but if it comes to the person, the employee performance, for example, or employee promotion, we should be very careful to assess this person only on the basis of such statistical picture, or only the picture made from data collected by sensors and other systems. The other issue is excessive surveillance. Of course, from the perspective of the owner of smart factory, it's good to have everything under control. But on the other hand, the excessive surveillance can lead to discrimination, social exclusion. And this is not only unacceptable from ethical point of view, but also many laws, EU laws and domestic laws prohibit that kind of approach, especially labor law. What else? Using drones, it should be. It's quite popular now in smart environments, and it's very useful, of course. But still, Here we have the risk of unintentional processing of personal data because we can capture images of people in the background, for example, people that are not the part of the factory of the place we want to monitor. So it should be also taken into account. So the most intrusive or most dangerous practices from the perspective of data privacy is prediction and flagging tools, remote monitoring and time tracking, gamification and algorithmic management, health and biometric data use. Of course, these are all tools, and tools can always be used both for good, for bad, for different goals. So, but having these tools, it is worth to remember that we need to implement some means that will mitigate the risk of infringement of privacy. Data subject rights described in GDPR are also quite difficult to exercise in the smart factory. So the most important thing is to inform all people involved, especially employees, how their personal data will be processed and what they can do if they don't agree with that kind of processing. Very often there are tools that are completely unknown for people. People don't know how they work, what data they collect, and what will happen with this data. And this is difficult to find the way to protect data subject rights and to protect some business interests. Yes, so some business of the owner of the smart factory. But I think that transparency at each level of the communication with employees is the most important thing. Profiling and automated decision making is of course connected with data very closely. These two forms of data processing are regulated in GDPR too. And profiling is not necessarily connected with automated decision making, but usually is. So profiling consists of three elements. It must be done in automated form. It concerns personal data and is aimed at assessing the personal factor of natural person. That's why having a profile of a natural person, it's great to make automated decision then, because it's easier, yeah, to manage, especially big groups of people, like big groups of employees. But it can be harmful for this data subject. So there are some restrictions about it. I will tell you about in a while. Automatic decision making may overlap or result from profiling, but it's different kind of activity. May or may not include profiling, means the ability to make decisions using technical solutions without human intervention. So if we have human intervention, we don't have automatic decision making, but this human intervention can be just illusory. It must be something real. The human has to have influence on the decision. Otherwise, if the human intervention is purely technical, we still have automatic decision making, because it would be quite easy to escape from the rule on automatic decision making if just small human intervention would be something that let us go from this regulation. So automatic decision making can be made based on all kinds of data. So data provided directly by the individual, data observed about individual by sensor, for example, and finally derived or inferred data, so like profiles made on basis of other data collected before. Of course, the control must ensure that it has a legal basis justifying automatic decision making. The controller must also inform the data subject about the collected data and the use of automatic decision making. And data subject must always have right to human intervention. We call it also right to appeal. And with the right to appeal, transparency requirement is closely connected. I've been working for a while as a member of law committee in IEEE, and we were working on some practical hints how to implement ethical guidelines, especially in justice system. But to be honest, the transparency is I mean, it's my personal opinion, but it looks like it's on the most, or maybe the most important ethical requirement for autonomous system or for artificial intelligence system. And what I present now, this is a part of my work done during last 2 years. So I think that transparency has two very important aspects, which don't have to be connected each time, and I will explain what I mean. Of course, transparency is first access to reliable information about the operation of AI system. So it will be information about training procedure, training data, machine learning algorithms, methods of testing and validating the AI system. Then, second part of the transparency is what we call explainability, access to reliable explanation. And moreover, this explanation should be calibrated for different stakeholders, because not everybody needs the same level of complexity of the explanation. And sometimes even, I think that we don't, for data subjects, for example, employees in a smart factory, I think the explanation is much more important than information about how the AI system works, really, because they don't need to understand technical details. Yeah, they need to understand what's going on with their data and how it influences their lives, really, and their positions in the company. So, access to information includes methods used in the design and creation of AI, data management policies and procedures, applied standards, and I mean technical, legal, ethical, maybe granted certificates. In a draft or Artificial Intelligence Act, we have some provisions about certification. So maybe we'll have some certificates for high-risk AI, and then it will be quite important to know if the system we use, we buy, or we want to implement in our organization has appropriate certificate. But of course, it's probably not crucial for every system, as I put here in the example. Predictive algorithm that determines the performance of an employee and makes his promotion dependent on the result of this assessment probably should undergo a mandatory compliance assessment. But if we talk about Netflix and that kind of recommendation system, maybe not necessary, yeah, because the results of this recommendation don't have really such a big impact on our life, I think. Other thing, there are methods used to test and validate AI system, ability to identify that the data sets used. You have to know at every stage what data sets were used in the AI system. And finally, communication. The system should inform the user from the very beginning that the user communicates with AI, not with a human being. And going further, about explanation. So first, we need to establish a legally required level of explainability, if there is any legally required level of explainability. Then, but it will be probably if the Artificial Intelligence Act will be binding finally at some point. Categories of stakeholders to whom certain information should be disclosed, categories of information that may be disclosed to specific stakeholders, and finally, circumstances of disclosure. Because we need to remember that we can't just ignore intellectual property rights, know-how, trade secrets. These issues are important for entrepreneurs, for companies, for any business really. So we need to weigh somehow personal rights, human rights, and the employees' rights, for example, and this business rights really. So probably not every time we need to open, as we say, black box. I think that this is a quite complicated problem, but my thesis is that black box doesn't have to be open necessarily each time, at least not fully. So, in my opinion, there may be some different levels of transparency of this black box. So what I mean that, for example, not all users, like me, for example, I'm quite, let's say, conscious user of technology, but still, I don't understand how the raw data and code translate into benefits or harms for me in a specific case. I can understand what was the reasoning behind the decision, yes? And this is what I want to know. I want to know why decision was made, why prediction was made like this, what data was taken into account, and what I can do to appeal, or what I can do to change this decision, this prediction, whatever is it. So it will be more like a gray box, or maybe just one aspect of transparency, this explainability more than full transparency needed. So, but going back to the explainable AI in manufacturing, smart manufacturing it is important not only because of human rights or data protection, but it's also important from the point of view, from the business point of view, because of the liability, responsibility. If something happened, if any harm is caused, like somebody can be killed by the machine, or maybe some goods can be destroyed by the machine which doesn't work properly, then we need to understand what happened. Yeah, we need to understand what factors, what data, what algorithm, what kind of decision made by this machine led us to such tragic final result. So in explainable AI, we need explanation of the decision-making process. We need to know the responsibility. So who was involved in the development, implementation, management, and operation of the AI system. We need explanation of the data, of course. This is what I already said. We need also safety explanation. So we need to understand that the system was accurate, reliable, secure, resilient. This is something that it's not necessarily obvious. It should be like this, but we have to know that in specific cases it was like this. It's explanation of the impact. So it may be impact not only on individual, but impact on the group of people. And finally, we need also justification of the result. So it's not only important to explain why a certain decision was made, but we need explanation that this result, this decision is objective and fair, that this is justified. So it's not only technical issue, but also the issue of values we believe in. And because of that, explainable AI should apply such question: how did the system achieve its core result? Why did AI not give a different result? How were the data weighed and taken into account in a specific case? What does the data subject have to has to change in order to obtain a different decision? So the explanation can look differently for different stakeholders, but for sure it should be adequate. So in line with existing knowledge and beliefs, with context, what data was used, understandable. So it could be written, graphic. It should be adapted to the recipient, because it depends on the knowledge of the recipient really, and level of the expertise. With an alternative, so what should I do to change the decision? In the right time, with information about the need for human intervention, and with information about the lack of data, uncertainty, or inability to make decisions. Because it's also important to know if AI system doesn't have enough data, enough information to make the decision. And this timing is also a question we should ask if we need explainable by design, so in a real time, provided in a real time, or is it possible to have a so-called post hoc explanation? Of course, ideal situation would be to have explainability by design, so if the system explains itself in a real time. But because it's not easy, and many researchers and companies work on that, I think that unless maybe under circumstance that the explanation will be provided on time, even if it's post making decision, it will be still fine, but the explanation must be a guarantee, must be provided in a such time that provide data subject the right to appeal or other rights possible to exercise. And finally, to summarize, I have a few points to underline about data in smart factories. So there are some main legal issues to consider in context of data. So we need to remember that industrial data, including augmented reality and virtual reality, Video surveillance data, data used by AI algorithms are important components of personal data. So usually we have them in a mixed data set to which the provision of the GDPR also apply. Security policies for the protection of privacy in a smart environment should take into account the requirements not only GDPR but also Directive on Privacy and Electronic Communication, some international norms, standards, some national acts like labor law, and regulatory guidelines, especially guidelines issued by European Data Protection Board. Existing legislation may not reflect all aspects of personal data protection in industrial environment, so we need to monitor of future legislation. It will be e-privacy regulation, Digital Services Act, ADAS 2, and of course Artificial Intelligence Act that is on its way. It will take some time for sure, but there are some frameworks that probably won't change very much. The group of data subject which is especially threatened in the smart factory context are employees, so we need to provide them proper information, and all transparency processes should be transparent for them, and they should be properly informed how to exercise their rights. Sensitive data shouldn't be processed unless we have some legal basis, so we can fulfill the requirements for the exceptions specified in GDPR on other laws. The dynamic nature of the development of modern technology require risk-based approach, so it requires to check, to measure, to understand what's going on with data, on with systems, with technology we use on maybe not daily basis but regular basis during all life cycle of data, technology, AI tool. The implementation of privacy protection principles in organization requires the involvement of many stakeholders, because very often, especially in smart environment, we cooperate with other people in other entities, like we have some cloud solutions, we have a supply chain when different stakeholders are interconnected, and here we can have situation of joint controllership or entrustment of data, and it should be properly addressed. Of course, all persons responsible for personal data processing should be adequately trained, and it is recommended to organize regular trainings and workshops on privacy protection. Especially, we still very often don't have people with technical and legal background, for example. So very often we speak completely different languages, and it's worth to discuss and worth to exchange experience, exchange the approach. And finally, autonomous system that makes automatic decisions should guarantee access to reliable information about the operation of AI model and access to reliable explanation calibrated for different stakeholders. And we need to remember that these requirements like transparency, explainability, maybe today they are only ethical requirements, but they will be also legal requirements, because if I'll be asked about 2 or 3 words about the Artificial Intelligence Act, the draft of this act. I would say that transparency, explainability, they are the most, they are these values that are grounds for all requirements, or maybe not all, but most of requirements in this act. So I believe that it won't change much in the future. That's it from my side today. I'm sorry for any inconvenience, technical problems. I hope it didn't disturb you too much, and it was interesting. I'm open to any questions. Also, here on the presentation is my email address. So if you have some other questions, or if you want to stay in contact, you can find me also on LinkedIn and contact me about any issues connected with this subject. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela. I just also ask if anyone has questions, please feel free either to edit in the chat or to intervene, I mean, freely. So I don't know if there are questions in the chat box. Otherwise, yeah, probably. Okay.
No, I think
at the moment, okay. But feel free. I mean, if anyone wants to intervene, I would have one question, but I will. Okay. Okay. So,
Okay. So that's all for the presentation. And I come from a convention, not people speaking reasoning about the data usage. And you're talking differently, which is this. So, of course, you're saying that the perimeter of the protection of personal, especially sensitive data, it should be large enough to include not only identification of people, which is direct, so your name or whatever social security number, whatever it is, but also indirect ones. And this may reach even the aggregate level. So assume I have a team that works all together, and I know that the person in this team is particularly productive. If I take the productivity of the team every single day, I know when the guy is going to be there. Simply looking at the average productivity, when it gets higher, I know this level of let's say the possibility to identify the person also at this level implies that I need to protect the data also at the aggregate level. I'm wondering if this may downplay a lot what we can do with the data or not. So my question is, do you think this is going to restrict a lot of what we can do with the data? Because if the protection implies that we cannot do a series of things. And if these protections arrive to the level of even the aggregate data, then I'm wondering if this implies that we need to, let's say, switch off many of the things that we think we could do with data, or not.
Well, it's a very good question. Thank you. Yeah, I think this is a very common problem of business. Many businesses which I deal with really because I work with business too. And this is always a question: why we should do that? Why we have to abide by some rules about data protection? This is pointless. So many work to do. So I try to be quite liberal, I have to say, about this issue. So I think that the most important thing in data protection regulation is to protect people from being harmed somehow. So as long as the data processing is transparent, is safe, and as long as these people can say, okay, thank you, I don't want to work with you anymore, I don't want you to process my data anymore. Of course, there are some rules of retention, etc. It should be the main factor which decides what we can do with data. So having such data, personal data collected in normal business process, without any sensitive data, like without biometric data and health data, we can pretty do anything with them. Like anything, in using them in our business activity. Even if we can identify the person, even if we can identify this person based on aggregated data, the processing of so-called normal data, not sensitive data, it's not restricted at all. I mean, it is restricted by the obligation to apply some safety rules. But if this data is safety, and if we allow data subject to exercise their rights accordingly to the GDPR, we can use this data in our business practice. We can even, if there is legal ground for that, share this data with other entities if we have, for example, legitimate interest to do that. The bigger problem is with this biometric data or health data or any other sensitive data, because they are more and more used in business, especially like smart factory, to identify the person, to check this person's performance, but also to guarantee safety to this person. Because if the sensor see that the person heart rate is faster and faster, it means that something wrong is happening. So it gives a chance to somebody to react, to help. So there are always two sides of this, and probably maybe, I don't know, maybe some amendments in GDPR will be necessary, or some additional legal basis for data processing, like in Artificial Intelligence Act. We have new basis for processing sensitive data for purpose, which is the quality of data. So because the obligation is to have good quality of data, so we need to process them, to test the system, to check how it works, to see if there is no bias. And the Artificial Intelligence Act will allow data controllers to process even sensitive data to provide proper, correct, unbiased data sets. So maybe we'll need more of that kind of exceptions when we will be able legally use even sensitive data for the benefit of business, of course, but also people, society.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't know if there are questions from the online. Otherwise, one question which relates somehow to what we just was pointing to is because your talk, I think, highlighted somehow the two main concerns in the GDPR, which one is for identifying people, but on the other hand, big concerns is not only being careful that data doesn't identify people, but doesn't influence or doesn't impact negatively. Yeah. So the other big concerns about personal data is using such data, even if they are not personal, but in a way that can somehow making decisions making decisions on people is quite, challenging.
Yes.
And in fact, I was thinking, and my husband would be how to balance the formal aspects of the GDPR with the more, real and practical needs that you have in such context. Because on one hand, my feeling is that industry somehow, especially the big ones, somehow have the capability to deal with this formal and this bureaucracy, I would say, involving the GDPR requirements. So you have to set up roles, you have to produce documentation and so on. You have to ask consent, for example. But this doesn't mean that actually an ethical and legal use of, maybe it could be even illegal, but it doesn't mean that the usage processing of data is ethical. Because I could ask consent for everything, but I could take information, record information from the behavior. So without need to identify, and even I think sometimes it has no interest in identifying the subject, but this information can be used to nudge, for example, the employees or to make decisions on that. So I'm considering whether you how did you deal with this trade-off, difficult trade-off?
I can add on to what Vanessa was saying.
Yes,
because the thing is this was precisely my line of thought also. Because it seems to me that I guess it's not really clear what is the level at which we go to assure this. Because the point is, the discussion you had before you said, okay, this data can be used for that.
Yeah.
And then the only way we can really find out this case is to ask the person, the subject to providing the data, creating the data, and if we ask it, I'm okay with the usage of the data like this. And if he or she says, okay, then, at least we have an agreement that says it should be for removal of both. No, otherwise I understand. No. But the point is that there are cases in which this consent is given enough, the data, thinking about any other relationship here. But it's very diffuse, this fact of asking for permission and getting it, while at the same time doing something that is judged from outside the relationship is negative. Right? So we agree on something, but at the end, on a purely abstract level, you may be doing something that is not very nice.
Yeah.
Or that has very bad externalities beyond your relationship. So at one level, we look at the relationship, or we look at some sort of more abstract ethical level from which we say that this is kind of even if you guys are agreed on that.
It's also a good question. So I don't think personally that consent is a very good legal basis for processing data, because first, sometimes what we are not really aware of what we are agreed to. It's the first issue. The second issue, that maybe we didn't have enough information to make conscious and fully understood decision, really. The third thing, we can always say, okay, now I withdraw my consent, because the consent may be withdraw at any point of the processing. And there's no further basis for processing such data. So I think that the good legal basis for processing are specific legal provision, but of course it's not always so comfortable situation that we have a specific legal provision that okay, we can process this data. Or legitimate interest, and I think for business, this legitimate interest it's very good basis for data processing, but it's not like this legitimate interest may be just business interest, just, you know, because we do something, we produce something, we need to be, we need to have high performance, we need to do this or that. So we'll be processing this data because we need that. Yeah, it's good. But at the same time, using this basis, we need to do something we call balancing tests. So we need to take this legitimate interest of the business on one hand, and the humans, the data subject rights in this specific situation, and say, if my interest is more valuable than this data subject interest, or at least that they are similar, yeah. But if my business interest could be harmful somehow for this data subject, I can't justify my processing, and I can't use this legitimate interest. So probably it's not a perfect situation because it is still a question of assessment. But because we have such a complicated environments now, like business environments, technical, technological environments, general world is becoming more and more complicated because of the technology we don't understand very often. I think it's a good approach, this open approach, risk-based approach, the approach that requires from data controller to establish each time, am I allowed to process this data for this purpose? And it must be also, it's not only, you know, abstract decision. There must be a kind of analysis that I considered these issues, that I made decision based on some yeah, exactly. Some understanding the situation, not some facts. Yeah. So probably I can't answer differently for this question. It's very difficult. It's very complex to answer. But if I as an advisor, I would say to my client, yeah, if you want to decide for how to process safely personal data, how to use them in a way that makes a lot of profit for you, but it will be in the same time will be ethical and legal. Then do if you don't have any specific legal provision, just do this test. Do understand if it's not harmful anyhow for this data subject. So. And it's kind of, I kind of said it before when I said that I'm quite, that my approach is to remember what's the goal of GDPR, of other legal provisions connected with privacy. That it's not like bureaucracy, it's not formal obligation, there are not formal obligations. I mean, there are some, but it's not the purpose to produce a lot of documentation, for example. The purpose is to not harm.
So, okay, so I would say that because with other people here, they continue the conversation, but if there are no other, I mean, specific question, yeah, I would just like to thank, I mean, I see Francesco Pelosin. Thank you for attending, and yeah, thanks again.
Thank you,
Gabriela.
Okay. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Recording.
I don't know.
Okay, yes. No, I do it here.
Okay.
Wait, recuperare la registrazione.